Welcome on board the Rich Planet Starship, broadcasting from somewhere high above the Earth. I'm Richard D. Hall, and earlier this month I took a trip down to the surface of Earth, where I attended the Leeds 2010 Exopolitics Conference, and I was honoured to meet Professor John Searle, inventor of the Searle effect generator. Welcome to the Rich Planet Starship. I'm Richard D. Hall, and I'm extremely excited today because I have with me Professor John Searle and Fernando Morris. And Professor Searle is the inventor of the Searle effect generator, which I am fascinated by. And we watched Bradley Lockerman's fantastic film last night, which charts some of the life of John Searle and explains your invention. And today we're going to actually go into some detail of that because I have a background in electrical engineering. I graduated in electrical engineering in 1990 from Newcastle University. So I've got some interesting questions that I'd like to ask you. So, John, can you just tell us about the dreams first? Because you derived some of the information from dreams.
That's correct.
Can you start by telling us about that?
Well, there were two different dreams, but both are related.
Mm-hmm.
First one showed you the mathematics to use and what's going to happen if you don't get this technology out of the field. The thing is, what it's saying is that if you don't, then all life is going to end in due time, much sooner than expected.
Right.
And what it's saying that you're going to be developing a very great pressure and force with this gigantic steamrolling coming towards you.
Right.
So at that point, you just wake up screaming because you see you're going to be crushed.
Right.
But basically, the illustration is a game called hopscotch.
Right.
Every child mainly had the luck of playing it. And there was three squares, vertical, two horizontal, one vertical, and two horizontal. The pebble was always in square 3. Because as a child, I didn't know what that meant. But what happened is that every time the dream was exactly the same. Always the same. Your left leg is on the ground, your right leg is up in the air to cross over 3 into 4. I always wondered why this happened. Then the second dream also is showing you it showed a very long ladder going to the loft that you went to every night to get bales of straw to rebed the hens, so they always had fresh straw every night. On this occasion, the height of that loft is many times higher than normal. When I enter, instead of bales of straw, we have this circle of the straw with lines, straw going out like spikes of a bicycle wheel. And then suddenly it catches fire, and I'm in the middle of it. Because I wake up screaming.
Right.
And what it's also saying as time went on is that you're going to be involved with two distinct objects. That is a power system and a flying system.
Right.
Then, of course, Nancy had said everyone was disappeared. The one who disappeared was me. The school records say he disappeared. But then when I checked the date of that school, then I checked the date I entered the naval school, there are 10 days missing with no explanation.
Okay. Now, I'm just going to summarize, because not everyone who's watching this will be aware of what the machine is. It is a machine which produces electricity with no physical fuel source.
Then it's so.
Yeah. So it appears to be getting power from an invisible source.
But no, the source in the first place is in the rare earth itself.
In the rare earth element.
We have these extra band of electrons,
right,
which nobody can explain why these rare earths behave in this manner.
Right, and are they extracting those electrons from the surrounding environment then?
Yes.
Right,
yes.
so they're pulling electrons, and do those electrons get turned into photons then throughout the generator?
Well, what's happening is that, well, first of all, the SEG is a converter
Right.
of existing energy all around us. And that energy we can actually feel as temperature, body temperature, which
Right.
is why when John tried to get a hold of the SEG, his hands got very cold.
Right.
Anything that is at the atomic level, vibrating, electrons moving about, all that chaos, that's a source of energy. So the SEG is a converter of kinetic energy that we all feel
Right.
all around us.
So is the device destroying any matter, any mass?
That's the beauty of the SEG. It doesn't destroy anything.
Right.
It's sort of like taking water from a dam. Are you destroying the water that's coming in? And what's coming out? It's still the same. The difference is there's kinetic energy. And with the SEG, it utilizes it.
Right.
It makes a coherent, useful electrical current.
Okay. Thanks, Fernando. Now, I want to first go into the materials and the physical structure of the device, and then I want to go into the operational side. Okay, an explanation of how the magnetic fields and if there are any electric currents in there. Firstly, the materials. There are 4 materials, John. Yeah.
Right.
Now, we've got copper, which is a conductor. Yeah. You've got, I believe, a magnetic material. We've got the rare earth?
Teflon.
Teflon is the...
Teflon or dielectric to help regulate the flow.
That's the 4th one.
That's the third.
The third one. And
The
then,
fourth, the innermost, is neodymium.
okay, so if we go out from the center, because
center?
we've got a solid ring in the center, and then we've got the rollers, and they're made of the same material, yeah? So from the center, let's go out and explain the materials. You've got, the first one is...
The most dense, and that's neodymium.
Neodymium.
That's the reservoir of electrons that go
Right.
there, just like a dam has a reservoir of water.
Then the next layer,
Then you have the dielectric. Think of that as the dam, what holds back
like a dam, yeah?
Like, yeah.
Okay. Then we've got,
the magnetic,
right?
which makes the whole thing work.
So it's
just like a generator.
A magnet in the shape of a ring, yeah?
Yeah.
And then we've got the copper. Is that
The copper, right?
the
And that's
conductor?
where the electrons are emitted from, and the eddy currents develop as well.
Right. And I believe the magnet has to be magnetized in a very specific way.
Yes.
So does it, when you manufacture the magnet, does it start off as a magnet, or do you have to magnetize it?
It's a blank.
It's a blank.
We magnetize it in a unique fashion, in a way that that is not done by the industry.
Right.
So it's a unique process.
So where is the north and the south in the disc then?
But the north is normally, if you stand it up at the top,
right.
south is down at the bottom of the way.
Right.
The bottom half on an analyzer, you see, is compact, very dark, and very little darkness in the top, the north
Right.
side. So the rollers have something to roll out. Well, they float on that.
Right.
Just a bit.
So am I right in thinking that the rollers have the identical same 4 materials throughout them,
Yes.
you know, as from the center outwards, right? Now, am I right in thinking that that you've got north, south, north, south, north, south 4 times throughout that?
It's all north, south. It's just that there's variations, a sine wave type variations,
Right.
throughout its periphery.
So it's not, the rollers are not north at the top and south at the bottom then?
Oh, yes, they are.
Oh, they are. So do you get, for example, is the roller made of four parts that are put together? 4,
8 of them.
8,
8 segments makes a roller.
right? And does each roller have a north and south? North and
Yes,
top?
they do, but they have variations, which is the
within-
waveform we're talking about.
Right. So it's a very special type of
So that-
magnetization then. It's not,
It's very special. Yes, every
Right.
segment, 8 segments, are individual magnets, well, magnetic devices.
Yes.
They have information printed on each one.
right?
They're not only magnets, and through the center is a monopole that holds them together.
Right.
Now, normally, that the fields pull each one too tight, so we have to, on one side, the face of each segment, we have to put another wave on that gently eases it off the one below it.
Right.
So that eases it.
So are all 8 of the parts that make up the roller, are they all identical or are they all different?
They're all identical.
They're all identical, right? And is the central part made up of 8 slices as well?
No,
that's
it's
just
just
one.
a single.
That's a
Think
single.
of that as the fixed stator,
Right. Right.
but it does have a type of waveform.
Right. And let's just go on to the operational side of it, because will it work with just the central core and one set of rollers? Will it produce?
They will all spin, and of course, if you advance a coil with a bulb to pick up that energy, it will like the bulb.
Yeah, in theory, you can have one roller going around, but to make
one single roller,
and that'll be enough to demonstrate the Searle effect, which is the objective of our company, Searle Magnetics.
Right. Good. Now then, let's just go on to the operational side. Now that we've had a look at the materials, every electric motor works on using the Lorentz force. Yeah, that we know of in electrical engineering. Okay, you have Fleming's right-hand rule, where you have a current at right angles to each other. So you've got the current, you've got a field. First finger field, second finger current, thumb. It moves that way. You have to have the two, and it moves that way.
Of course.
Now, is there electric current in this generator?
Definitely, and you can use those right-angled vectors on the SEG. The electric is from the axis radially out. The magnetic is, vertically. And velocity is.
So the electric current is going from the center,
and radiating
outwards in all directions.
Correct.
So that's a bit like a Faraday disc then, like a monopolar generator.
Yeah. So from a technical perspective, the SEG is legitimately a motor or a generator, depending on your mode.
Yeah. Okay.
Because you have to bear in mind, in normal generation, that the electrons are all at random. Run state. This unit don't allow that. It brings them into a uniform, which means now the power moving through like a diode through the system is very compressed and it's very powerful, which a normal generator that does all the time random all the way through the system. So you generate heat. When they compress like that, the electrons can't bang about. They're tied like a load of trucks traveling in one direction. So you don't get this loss of energy from the generation.
Right. You have to make a distinction between JAWS technology and normal tech that we're used to. At the atomic level, you see a lot of random process taking place, which creates heating and all that.
Right.
The SEG technology is uniform.
Right.
In other words, it's coherent, vibrating, directional. You don't have the chaos.
Right.
And that's the difference.
So when the electric current reaches the outside of the inner ring, how does it go through the rollers then?
We're dealing with a different kind of electricity here.
Right.
We're all used to the single electron that acts like a particle bouncing around, kicking around. And, it accelerates, stops because it comes across an atom or something. It accelerates, stops.
Sorry, just a second.
You've had a few military.
Yeah, I've noticed. I have. Really? Can we turn
I think you're on to
down
it.
just a tiny bit?
I think it'll be okay.
I'm sure.
I'd like a drink, though.
We're not clipping it. It's not clipping it.
An occasional word. It's just a tiny bit too loud. It is, isn't it?
One lightweight here, as the electrons come off the plate on the back of the road.
Too much noise outside. We're going to wait.
Yeah, I just get an idea.
You must have seen my 9/11 talk.
He's mangling the best part, too.
I know. It's all right. Right. Let's go.
Right. We talked about the electric current being different to what we would normally think of electricity flowing down a single wire.
Right. Conventional electricity utilizes an electron, but with the SEG, it actually forms a pair of electrons or a boson.
Right.
And you still get the electric currents and all that. It's just that it behaves more like a photon. And when it does exit the machine, it splits up again, and you see a little bit of a halo because photons are being emitted.
Right. I have interviewed a guy who has written a book all about photons and electrons, and he believes that an electron is basically a photon in a double loop.
Right.
So that's where you've got this distinction between matter and energy. You know, the photon is energy with no mass, whereas the electron is mass. And you know, so that at what point are we creating photons? Where do the photons emerge?
Between material layers,
Right.
using the a Hall effect,
Right.
and that's how electrons are compressed. And once they become a pair of electrons, it becomes a different entity. It no longer behaves like a normal electron. It behaves more like a photon, and therefore you have high velocities. Whereas normal electricity that you have here it has a drift velocity of a fraction of an inch per second and creating a lot of heating with the SEG. By the time it exits, it could be going at near the speed of light.
It's quite hard to get my head around because, you know, this wasn't included in my electrical engineering degree.
No, it isn't.
Because it's merging into physics.
It sure does.
So if we plot the magnetic field, you said that it's more like a magnetic wave between the rollers.
Yeah, there's a bit of a waveform on it, which is why I built a device to scan that waveform. You have a Gauss meter, and then we rotate the ring, and we're able to scan the waveform.
Right.
We put it into a storage oscilloscope, and we can actually trace it out, plot it out.
Right.
So that has been confirmed, by the way, through my research.
Right.
Bear in mind that halfway round the height, it's at 0 point. And then it gradually increases the magnetic strength as you go to the top. You reach the peak of your magnetic field. Then you start decreasing to 0 point. Then you go the opposite field, slowly increasing to peak, decreasing back to 0. And that's how it goes all the way around the system.
Right.
The roller sits at the base of the curve.
Yeah.
So every roll you put on seeks a base in which to sit on.
So what keeps the roller off the ground when it's whizzing round?
It keeps it off. It's through eddy currents, the interaction between the copper layer on the stator ring.
It's floating.
Right. And also there's another copper layer on the rollers as well.
Right.
The magnetic interaction and the fluctuations create eddy currents that allows it what's called a magnetic bearing. And when you have something like that, you know, a magnetic bearing means you have no wear, and that's great with any device.
So are magnetic bearings used in industry at all? Hardly. Right. Okay. It's a bit like magnetic levitation.
It'd be nice if you had a motor with a magnetic bearing. That means you wouldn't need lubricants and you wouldn't have any wear.
So they're called rollers, but they don't actually spin around.
Yes,
Roller sets.
Oh, they do spin around.
Yes.
Right.
Without touching anything.
Right. So they're what, a few mil gap between the roller and the outer layer of the inner ring. Is it? What's the gap?
It depends on the field strength, but in the SEG, John, would you describe it as a 1 mil or 2 mil gap?
About 2 mil. Of course, maybe other metals will lift it a bit more. But in any case, 2 mil or more means it's floating. There's no friction on the plate.
I want to add that I have built a demonstration unit to prove that principle.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
So we'll come on to the demonstration unit. You actually have outer coils on the outside which actually puts energy into the system.
No, what I have in the demonstration unit is the large ring. Instead of moving the roller, I move the large ring to isolate the effect. And then I have a roller on it with an asymmetrical magnetic field, and it will float and it will rotate. Right. I can show you a clip on it.
So it's been the roller's been kind of almost held there by eddy current. It's fascinating to watch it whizzing around.
Two forces.
It doesn't fly off.
Yeah.
Right. There are two forces at work: the general attraction from the large magnetic field, and the opposing fields of the eddy currents. Right. Between those two, it finds an equilibrium, which allows it to kind of float and spin at the same time.
So it's very similar to a moon going around the Earth, then.
Yes.
Similar, but not the same, because that's gravitation, and we're talking about
because it is orbiting around a larger body. Yes.
Right.
Well, to make it easy, if we say that the plate was the size of the planet Earth,
Yeah.
The roller was the size of the moon.
Mhm.
The distance at which that roller would go round is the same distance from the moon to Earth.
Yeah.
The same laws are applying.
Mhm.
So because the plate itself is brought down small, the moon is brought small, we have a smaller orbit.
Mhm.
But whatever happens, the same rules between Earth and the moon is applying to this plate and this roller set.
Right.
In other words, the plate is a heavy lump of gravity. The roller is a smaller lump of gravity. And they are reacting the same as the planet and the moon are reacting. There's no difference.
All right. Now we come on to the superconductive element of this. The whole thing cools down when it starts running. Yeah. I mean, have you measured any changes in temperature with the model that you've
I'm
done?
not at that stage yet.
Not at that stage.
That's what we're looking for more
Right.
funding and resources.
All right. And I mean, we know that from normal physics that conductivity requires very low temperature. And
Right.
does it sort of go into a different mode once you reach that superconductive state then?
Keep in mind that the more energy you take out of the machine,
Yeah.
the colder it gets. Why? Because temperature is being converted into electrical power.
Yeah.
If you don't have a lot of vibrations and chaos, if chaos is being reduced, consequently temperature is being reduced because it's being converted into coherent currents.
Right.
That's why that's why it gets so cold. The problem with John's original generators is that they just went all out. And the temperature dropped quickly.
So as it gets more cold, does that make the efficiency of the machine higher then? Is that?
Oh yeah, the cooler it gets, the more efficient it is.
Or the more effective, you might say.
Right. So we have two operating modes, one above superconductivity, one below.
Right.
And above the superconductivity, we can utilize it as a generator. Right. Below, it becomes a transportation, you might say. In John's case, it was an out-of-control situation where it experienced levitation, or John calls it inverse gravity, where superconductivity has an effect.
Yes.
In his machine with gravity itself.
We know the people like Eugene Podkutnov. Are you aware of his work? He has spun superconducting disks in magnetic fields and noticed that their weight reduces by a certain percent.
Right. They notice an anomaly. Yes.
Yeah. But this craft machine basically completely overcomes gravity. Can you explain that? How is it doing that? I mean, I know it's quite difficult to explain, but can you try?
John, how would you explain the inverse gravity effect?
Well, all I can say here from my past experience is that when the craft is forced up, now the craft is being forced away from the earth, not using energy to push it up. What has happened then, you reach at speed level in which the whole ship is at superconductor state. Here, gravity, half of the gravity seems to have gone outside, made a bow wave around the vehicle.
Right.
The other half seems on all tests to remain in there, in the ship itself. Right. So traveling on board a ship will be no different than half the force acting on you now. You can't feel that 1G, so you won't feel the half G either.
Yeah.
What is happening is that as the power builds up, the ship is more easier to control and the faster it can go. But whether you are on Earth to build this power up or in space, in space it's in better because I got pushed out the same way. But the half G still remains. So the half G means that the extra G is now creating that half G effects on your body.
Right.
So you're always kept at half G. Right. So you can go at any speed, you can flip over, no problem.
Right. The interview that I did with this guy called John Duffield, he explains the similarities between magnetic field and gravitational field. He believes that they're both effects on space itself. So electromagnetism or electromagnetic field is effectively space which has been twisted in two planes. So if you twist it that way and that way, it's a piece of twisted space. And a gravitational field is a piece of stressed space. So if you imagine a block and you put stress into it, it's more difficult for light to pass through it. So the two are related in that they are effects of space. And so I'm of the mind that electromagnetism can be used to create effects within gravity. It's just that in our conventional electric motors and generators, the fields aren't big enough to affect the gravitational field. Is that
It's not so much big enough. It's doing it just right.
right? Would you
from
describe it as resonance?
Right. From what I've learned, it appears that the matter has various facets. You have a motor. Well, in a different motor, it could be a generator. You have gravity. You can make it reversed.
Yeah.
John calls it inverse gravity. So we believe there are facets to all these forces. It's just a way of, you got to find a way to engage it and modify it.
Of course, something people don't realize, light and magnetism is electrons. We're looking at electrons in action at different angles, but they are all the same. They're just the same. The other thing is light is shown at 7 different bands, which gives us different colors due to the frequency of the band. Magnetic has always been shown as one band, but because light, electrons, magnetism are all one, the same thing.
Yeah.
Therefore, I said back in 1946, then the magnetic field is identical the same, because they are related to each other.
Yeah.
So there must be in bands. What we're doing is our magnetic system, which is I call conventional magnetism, uses white light. All the bands are all in one. What we've done is separated one band. It could be the blue band, the blue light, and its band of magnetic field. We got that band. When you separate the bands, they're much more powerful than when they're all together. So I say that our magnetic field really is in the blue band region of frequencies. And again, we got another issue. Every material has its own frequency. What we're doing is we try to make a compromise between all these 4 frequencies into one sort of base frequency, so that we'll always go the same way. So when you put your rolls on the first plate, scientists always say the next lot will go the opposite direction. They don't. They'll all go the same way. Same with it. You got another band. You could go, but let's put it this way: the voltage steps up. Every band you have, you put these extra rolls on, and the power is really going up. I find 3 plates are good enough for a house, and even for cars and lorries and buses. But when you come to flying, we don't put the extra plate on. What we do, we add 2 more elements to the system. That this bangs up the energy even greater. So it's a combination. You have to decide what materials you're going to use, and remember that all materials have different density, and we work into density. So we have to know the density of the material so we can decide how wide that band's going to be. Next problem is, will the thickness we pick for the wall be powerful enough to hold the magnetic field? Or will the field fall off? These are all sorts of things we have to consider. So nobody can just go make one in the shed. Amen. It's a very complicated thing. It looks simple watching it. What makes it very amazing to think that a weight is spinning there, not tied to any shell or form, and it's spinning racing around there, and it don't fly off. And I say, one more said to me on the internet connection, boy, that roller is spinning around that plate. I say, how many volts are you using? 5. I said, burnt it another 2. Did. They come back. It's going crazy. Because the speed is immense.
So just to come on to the model that was shown in the film, where you've got some LEDs and you put them into the field and it's generating an EMF. In that model, you actually are putting electricity into that system. That's not a working model, is it?
That's what we call the SEG mock-up.
Right.
It's far short of a prototype because we don't have all the elements into it.
Right.
It's magnetic and copper. What we're doing there is demonstrating some of the principles of the
Right.
SEG,
Right.
just by its own physical
Yes.
setup. Automatically, you see that the rollers space out by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They also stay on track.
Mhm.
These are confirmations of the concept.
Right. Yes.
And this is the way I do my research. I
Yes.
try to isolate the principles of the SEG and then demonstrate it. And I have 4 demonstrators so far.
Good. Good. And just to go into the material that's holding you back, that's holding you back. You're getting
What's holding us back is the kind of funding that will support the kind of infrastructure necessary to build an SEG. Remember, when John first started out, he had everything in place. Personnel, facilities,
Right.
engineers, and all that.
All right. So
that's what I'm trying to recreate for John.
right, and you
myself.
need some of this is it rare earth element. Is that the main thing? Is that the main cost that
No, it isn't. It's the facilities,
Right.
the manpower, the research, the companies, the power sources, and all that.
Right.
There's an infrastructure that's necessary to build an SEG. You just can't make it. We have to deal with reality.
right? And you're seeking
Oh,
interested parties. So
we're seeking investors, yeah.
yes. So if there are any,
if we're going to start from scratch, we're going to need $3 million at least,
Right.
and that's to prove the Searle effect.
Right.
And then from there we go on to manufacturing.
all right. So if there are any people watching who would like to get involved in investing their money into this project, then
We do have parties interested, but we have to sort them out.
right.
Sometimes they're not what you think they are. We have
Right.
to
Yeah.
sort them out, as I said.
So I mean, some people might wonder, well, how come you haven't kept a working machine, John? Why?
How can you keep it if people take them from?
Right.
Well, trouble is, when people see, gosh, we got millions of dollars here,
Yeah.
we could take it and own it.
Mhm.
And I was still everything, the equipment to stop you working, so you can't do nothing.
Mhm.
They then think you'll get on your hands and beg them, you give them the secrets needed to make that magnetic setup right. But of course, I don't submit.
So it's
to
The last unit was back in '82.
right.
And
The last one that was
right.
over unit.
He had it between the walls. It was power in his home. Eventually, the Midlands Electric, was it Midlands Electric Company?
Midlands Electric.
Yeah, they noticed he didn't have a bill, and yet he had electrical power, and
Right.
that's when he had a lot of problems.
Right.
Because at one point I'd like to push here is that people will say, well, if you made it in 1946, why can't you do it now?
Mm.
Well, in 1946, the make an SG was £108 to me. I'd like to see somebody go and make an SG today for that money.
Mhm.
It costs millions to make one off.
Right.
The next thing is that those types were made just for our own pleasure. It took 3 months to make each one.
Mhm.
Production, that's useless. You can't do that. So I had to rethink how we could turn that into a production model. This is what Morris is working on. The suggestions have been put to him, and he's working on it. And so far, it's green. Gone green. It's okay. I'm satisfied. Everything's looking good for a production machine that can be mass produced. If all goes well and there's no problem, the first unit, we can up and down the par on it, and it makes no malfunction. I can say, right, we can go on to the production line now with it. Now, with this thing it's a new technology. We have now changed from the old system to another system which is fast and quick to mass produce. At SG, you need at least produce a couple of thousand a week on the line, or it's no good from the point of economics. So it's a matter of producing a system that you just can bang them out. And at the moment, that looks very good. At the moment, I'm quite happy how things are going. But the cost today to do it is terrifically. And every year the price is going up. And we can't control the price. It's the market that's controlling the price. So the sooner we get this going, the cheaper the units will be. And the more lines we get running, the cheaper still, because when you buy more and more bulk, the price goes down.
Okay.
So these are issues people don't think about.
Some people wonder why you haven't applied for a patent for this device.
But
Can you explain?
the big thing is that we're trying to get something we can mass produce, that produce energy as the original machines did. And secondly, it's while we're struggling to get this, you've been stopped time and time again by people who want to own it. They should just steal your property, so you can't move. You got to start again.
I know if we try to patent the U.S., they always screen these patents.
Oh no!
It rings bells, says this could be a weapon and all that, and then they can immediately stop you.
Right. Yeah.
So we rather copyright it or just keep it in house. In fact, the magnetization process, we're not going to patent it. It'll just be a company secret.
Right. And Fernando, have you looked at any other over unity devices, like for example the Steinmeier cell or Pons and Fleischmann? Because I'm actually looking at those now and studying them, and I believe there's credence.
I really don't know much about those other ones. I'm focused on John's technology.
And is there anywhere where people can get updates on your progress?
Certainly. We have a website called searlsolution.com.
Searlsolution.com.
SEARL solution.com.
And if you do get over unity, what would the next stage be then?
Well, we have to be careful. We have to make sure it is fully developed to the extent that we can present it.
Right.
One of the most dangerous positions we could be in is just having one demonstration unit.
Right.
We'd rather have a lot of them, just to make sure that there are no incidents.
And let's say you've got your demonstration unit that demonstrates over unity. You then need to prove it in a university somewhere.
I wouldn't call it over unity. It's a unit that's converting energy.
Right.
And which is why you have this temperature drop.
Right. So the actual source of the energy for the electric current comes from the surrounding temperature of the room. It's
ambient, right. So your room temperature would drop. That's the only consequence of it.
Right. So would this not, let's say you were using it to power something quite big, like, I don't know, a big machine. Would it not completely freeze? Would the temperature drop not be just vast, so it would cause problems with? Do you know what I mean? Or does it not work like that? I mean,
you just work it outdoors, but it is scalable. The smallest unit we can make is 15 kilowatts using John's way of designing, and that's the beauty of SEG. Is simply the more massive, the more power you get out of it.
Right.
And
so if you're powering your house off it, let's say 5 kilowatts, something like that.
Yeah.
There'll be no problem with it. You making your house really cold or something.
Well, we should ask him. He had one for 31 years operating his home.
No.
So did you convert it to 240 volts, John?
Yeah, the power was for 240 with 50 cycles raised to give us 50 cycles.
So
bear in mind that when you're not drawing power, it has an idle speed.
Right.
It keeps running, never stops.
They're like a turbine generator in a power station.
Just idle. It means it's fully charged. As soon as you switch on, the flow starts and the rollers speed up.
As you add load onto it. That's just phenomenal. So it's got its own built-in governor then. That's
right.
What you say.
It immediately reacts because think about what you're doing. You're drawing more current out of it. Consequently, it drives the rollers to move faster.
Yes. You must bear in mind, it's a linear motor on a magnetic bearing, but also a diode is one direction. Secondly, it's an auto transformer, and again, the input in this machine is coming from all the fabric around itself. It is putting it in uniform motion. It is now pushed out on the outer copper or aluminium, whatever material you pick, goes onto the back of the roller.
Right.
Now, the back of the roller, due to rotation, is short and it's longer on the front. Newton's law is clearly seen. The electrons coming back of the roller gets to the top very quick. It's accelerating. Right. Now, it can't turn to go around it, because to do that, as Newton said, you've got to apply a force. So they just come off to the next ring, which is waiting to receive any energy around itself. And the process keeps on till you get to the final rollers of the third set. This then jump to the coils or a brush, depending what system you're using.
And then
conventional concepts come into play. In other words, you've got very high voltage, so you drop it to the voltage that you want. This gives you, well, current's proportional to the voltage, so you get your current.
So now that's a very good qualitative description, John. But have you tried to get someone to quantitatively do this using equations? I mean, every electric device you can model mathematically. I mean, is this something that you've considered, Fernando?
I know the SG is based on mathematics.
Yes.
You cannot design it without it.
Yeah.
But and John has, I think you had a whole book of numbers and based on the squares, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have demonstrated, because what printers of mathematical books for schools said there was only one type of square you could do it, a free square. And I told them, you're wrong. You could go to infinity. And the mathematical system for each grade, I call them 1, 2, and 3. That's all the grades, mathematical grades we have. 1 is all even numbers. Another place, all odd numbers fit this one mathematics, regardless. The other half, all the numbers, are again divided in half. The first lot I call type 2. This is a mathematics, which sort of 4 squares are identical more or less, switching in both directions. This switching going on all the time, which tells me that energy can switch to matter, matter can switch to energy in a flick of a finger. Whichever goes out of step, it will correct it.
In Einstein's famous equation, E equals mc squared. Yeah. So.
And in these mathematics, when you set them out, it's interesting to see. This game tells me all about your structure. It tells me all about the planet structure. It tells me everything. If you look at it, you find the same rules as shown in the hopscotch.
I have to say, I can't get my head around where the hopscotch and the grid and the random numbers where they add up to the same number. I can't see where that fits into the model. Maybe it's because I've been trained in electrical engineering and I'm too,
Right, this is a new technology. It puts you into a new window, a new world of opportunities.
Right.
And it's going to be highly beneficial for all of us because we're talking about here energy and transportation.
Yes.
So it should make our civilization viable, which I think right now it is not. We're kind of degrading the environment as it is.
All right, and John, all right, and Fernando, I really hope you get a working prototype. But
we made a lot of progress, and we're definitely headed in that direction.
Right. Well, it's very exciting to meet both of you.
The thing is, people must remember, because I had no formal education, because I'm deaf, I haven't got hearing bones to hear with. I have developed a system. This half of the skull is dead to all vibration.
Yeah.
Don't receive or identify any problem. This side, I identify 2 bands and I have to fill in the missing bits when one talks. One has to be very close to the bones, oscillate enough for me to, make something of it. But what happens is the teachers never took any notice. They didn't worry about why you couldn't learn. And again, so I wasn't programmed as they program you as a child. So they sort of put you in a box. But they couldn't put me in a box. All I was doing, looking at everything that was happening and questioning why.
Yes.
And eventually became the real, so we say, point that really made things happen was when I started my apprenticeship as electrical engineer. And then the first docket I took to the stores for cable, bang, what does that mean? 2 and a little 2. So I said to foreman, what does that mean? That's 2 squares. Well, I thought, what's 2 squares? He just draw the paper, 4 squares, 2 by 2. I said, well, what's the value of this? Oh, nothing.
Right.
So I said, well, to me, a structure, that's a structure, must have function. No matter what the structure is, that's a function. I have to find out what that value to those squares are.
Right. Yes.
And that's this work that showed me 1 and 2 squares were not squares at all.
Right.
They are DNA.
You're right.
Of
So you're
squares.
differentiating
So-
between what's purely mathematical and what is reality.
What John has found is his mathematical matrix, which is called the magic square as well,
Right.
is able to simulate nature's processes. And what John has done, because what he saw is that we're living in a random state.
Right.
Okay, and he has transposed it so that the output is uniform. Then you got coherent currents and so forth.
Right. Okay.
The SCG is based on those figures. That's how we design it.
Okay.
That was just a matter of time and devotion
Right.
to find out what the Hopscotch was saying.
Right.
I mean, and bit by bit, my work brought the images together, and I could see this square business fitting in. And it was clear that the work was dealing with elements, it was dealing with energy of immense energy output and pressure, and then also the second one that is clearly was to do with flight using the same technology, only on a much more complicated system. Bit by bit came together. The first generator made was generator, and it decided for some stupid reason to go to the ceiling. And in the end, when it went through the ceiling, the second one, I decided, well, give it a body. We'll get the generator, give it a body, and we'll see what we can do with it. And of course, I got shot at because I frightened the pigeons. Well, that's what I told the police. He frightened my pigeons. What he meant was the pigeons put such an output, and they didn't like the job to have to keep cleaning this up.
Right.
Every time one of these things went up.
Yeah. So it went through the actual roof of the house, right?
Yeah.
Right. All right then, John. Well, thank you very much for talking to me.
It's nice to meet you.
I've loved listening to you, both of you, and good luck with your research. And we hope you get a working prototype. Thanks, Fernando.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Thank you.
All the best.
Of course, that's another exciting thing in my experiment where that was amazing what happened.